To millions of Australians, Sam Kekovich is the politically insensitive, fiercely patriotic face of the thriving lamb industry. To those of us who watched him play, he's the raging bull cut down on the cusp of greatness. Welcome, Sam.
Welcome, Michael.
How was the intro?
Well, I was quite happy with it. However, I've got this sneaking suspicion it's going to be a dichotomy. There's going to be a little bit of warmth, and then there's going to be a bit of a slap somewhere along the line.
Yeah, that's not my style.
But we'll endure this. I'm happy with it.
How's the lamnesia going, mate?
Lamnesia's going well. I've got my faculties back, so I've finally got to a stage where I'm confident sitting alongside you, the great man.
Let me take you back to another time.
Yeah.
1969, you're 19 years of age. You win North Melbourne's Best and Fairest Award. You play 16 games and you kick 56 goals. I mean, you were probably the most valuable commodity in the AFL. At the end of that season, you do a knee. Were you ever the same again?
It's debatable. I think I played some very good footy after it. Probably not on a consistent level, but certainly the knee robbed me of a little bit of pace and lateral movement.
It did. You were no doubt about that. That it did diminish your athletic prowess.
Oh, possibly, but I still thought I'd played some good footy.
Yeah, you did. I'm not to diminish that, but you were like off the charts in '69. I mean, everyone sort of was watching this young bloke who exploded on the scene and just looked as if he had the world at his feet.
Yeah.
What happened to your knee? Oh, you played the last game of '69 and missed almost 3/4 of the next season. What happened?
Well, funnily enough, I did it playing soccer, and it was with Harry Beitzel's Galars here in Melbourne against I think it was a makeshift Romanian side. Anyhow, I happened to be the goalie. Anyhow, they kicked about 6 goals on me within minutes. Anyhow, I got a bit frustrated, so I ended up taking the ball from the goal square and dribbled up to the centre. Anyhow, I got dispossessed and I pivoted on a 5-cent piece virtually for, on your knee, and I heard it just snap, heard it crack. And who should I fall into? But Doc Rowett. Doc Rowett played that
the
day.
Melbourne centre back, yeah.
Anyhow, I couldn't hobble. I didn't know what happened, but I knew it was excruciating. The pain was excruciating.
Lots of people hear the name Sam Kekovich, lots of people of my vintage hear your name and often say, quote, wasted talent, unquote. Is that fair or unfair?
Oh, no, I can understand where they're coming from. And probably, they've got probably a valid reason for it. I think, in all seriousness, on reflection, I could well slot into that category. Not perhaps to the extent that a lot of people think. I still did pan out a fair career over a 10-year period. Had a lot of injuries, but not using that as an excuse. I guess some of my level of commitment did wane or wither towards the end after the premiership.
Towards the end or early? I mean,
no. I had a few things to grapple with in my earlier years, but
like?
I had a lot of injuries. Yeah, my knee took a fair bit out of it, and 1 or 2 personal issues. But outside of that, things were tracking along fairly well. And then, of course, after we won a premiership, I guess, that tended to wane a little bit.
What, you were satisfied with that?
Well, you could probably say that. I was probably satisfied to a degree. Perhaps footy didn't have the priority that it once probably held. And, I might have got a bit bored with the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Who would you think in today's football most resembles the young Sam Kekovich?
Well, I always looked at Tim Watson. I thought Tim Watson played a very similar game to me.
Yep.
I look at his son, Job. Job's fairly in and under, attacks the ball, got his head over the ball and, totally committed to the cause, and, got a manic obsession to get the pill. I think he's of a similar ilk.
I thought you might have seen yourself as an amalgam of Judd, Selwood and...
Well, I wanted to draw that analogy, but I thought by doing that, Michael, you might thought I might have been getting ahead of myself.
Now, there is one bloke who's placed today who reminds me of you.
Elaborate.
His name's Patrick Dangerfield.
Yeah. I've seen Patrick play a number of times.
He's good over his head.
Good over his head.
He's quick, explosive off the mark. Kicks running goals. So how does that sit with you?
Well, that sits pretty well, mate. Very comfortably, Michael.
Sammy, North Melbourne's first premiership team comes in 1975.
Yeah.
You play in it.
Yeah.
And the official club photograph has got 19 people in it. Sam Kekovich is missing. What happened?
Probably one of the real regrets I've got, in all honesty, is missing that photo. Well, I missed it, through stupid, being silly, by not turning up at the official time.
You just ignored it, did you?
Well, I must have ignored it. I don't know whether I ignored it. I didn't think they'd be fair dinkum taking that photo without me possibly being there.
I can believe that. So you thought if I'm not there, it won't happen?
Well, I didn't think anyone in their right frame of mind would have the temerity of taking a shot without the great Sam Kekovich.
You mean that, don't laugh.
I didn't know. Well, probably a bit of me at the time probably did mean it. But the reality was that Barassi decided to go ahead with it, and to this day, with all the sophisticated weaponry at their disposal, where they could superimpose and whatever, they still insist.
Does it hurt?
Well, probably to a degree it does, but everyone's aware of it. It's taken me around the world, the speculation of where was I or, why the missing photo. But it probably does hurt because that's our most prized bit of memorabilia because that really depicts, you got to understand, it took us 50 years to win that since our inception in 1925. And it more than just a photo, it probably illustrates the history and the very fabric of what North Melbourne was and the great people that came before it and the great people that followed after it, because I think that's probably the most pivotal landmark in the history of North Melbourne.
Do you think Barassi did it to spite you because of the frustration of you being a little bit unreliable?
There might have been a bit of that. Bearing in mind, he and I have a wonderful relationship.
I know that. Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
Probably at the time it was a bit testy, our relationship, for obvious reasons.
But you were. I think it's not unfair to say you were a law unto yourself, weren't you?
I was. Yeah. I always. There's no doubt. Look, on reflection, there was a lot of things I took for granted, and probably being the big fish in the small pond, I felt in my own mind that it sort of gave me a little bit more tarmac, a bit more licence to do what I wanted to do, but. That was just my immaturity, ignorance and naivety, I guess. But someone like Barassi certainly sorted me out very quickly. Well,
72, we talk about 72, was North won one game, one of 22 games.
Yeah.
You were equal leading goal kicker with 19.
Yeah.
And the future looked terribly bleak for North, didn't it?
It did.
Brian Dixon was the coach?
He was.
Where did you think you were headed from there?
I don't know if I had the capacity to really think a great deal about where the club was heading in those days. It was almost one of self-preservation, more than anything, looking at it from a broader perspective. Admittedly, on the surface, it didn't look very good. So we were more quite content to go along the way we were going, and hopefully we're going to improve.
Well, 73 comes around, Ron Barassi's the coach. It's the first step in North becoming a powerhouse.
Oh, so that's the first
Must have been exciting. Must have been really
exciting. It really was. Look, it was riveting stuff. When the announcement came, you could imagine a name of that ilk, and to actually see the great man arrive in our presence, everyone just lifted a foot or two, and you could feel a tingle in your spine. But they were exciting times, and you knew you're on the verge of something was going to happen. You could see the structure was there, the quality of people were there, the sense of urgency was certainly prevalent, and it just needed a ringmaster. And the perfect scenario evolved, where the great man arrived, and he was the one that acted as the great catalyst to gel everything together.
What made him the right man for the moment?
Well, I'll tell you what made him a great man. Everyone's got their own version of greatness, and why coaches are great, and why certain leaders are leaders. Barassi was always recognised, to say an unknown, as the great orator. Fire and brimstone, do this and inspire. I never found him like that. Barassi's very presence was enough for me. Certain people have got a sixth sense.
Yep.
When someone walks into a room,
there's an aura.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about people that are great. And Barassi had it. And, to everyone, and he's still to this day. The only one that doesn't know how great they are is Barassi himself.
True.
He's so humble in his own way.
74-75, Sam, are the two big years for the footy club.
Yeah.
A grand final and then a premiership.
Yeah.
Now, I have done a little bit of research on you. You played 8 finals in that time.
Yeah.
You were listed in the best players once. Now, surely that's an oversight, isn't it? It's made for you. It's finals, September, the MCG.
I thought I would have done better than that.
Did you?
Yeah.
You surprised at that? Maybe they got it wrong. I remember the 75 grand final.
Well, the 74 grand final was a very bad day for me. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, against Richmond.
Against Richmond.
Yeah,
that was a very poor game. Given the fact that the expectation was that if I played well, we had a chance of winning, and I performed very poorly, and in fact got sucked in. It was a very, very bad day for me. But the other finals,
how did you get sucked in? Were you nervous?
No, I would have been a bit nervous, yeah. Certainly I was nervous going out there. Not nervous because of thinking of the opposition. Nervous about my own performance and the thought of, club in their own quest for their first ever premiership.
Yep.
Could we, would we, and then when it started disintegrating before my very eyes, it just became a totally different scenario.
So 75, you played a role in the ruck in 75, didn't you?
I played, forward line ruck work. We used to split the ground up a bit, but predominantly across the half forward line.
So that premiership, was that the ultimate footy moment for you?
Well, look, you got to understand, 50 years in the competition, and totally bereft of resource, and predominantly a blue collar operation throughout our existence, and to see people, been following that through rain, hail, and shine. To see the euphoric scenes directly after the game, they were just priceless. You'd almost swear blind. I don't know what utopia is or where the mountaintop is, but I don't think it gets any better than that.
I think people could have died happy after.
Well, they would have.
Supporters.
Look, euthanasia would have even been passed that day.
Did you happen to sort of put yourself out and go to the Southern Cross that night for the grand final celebration?
I think I might have fleetingly imbibed over the drip tray, Michael. Yes. You've done too much research, Michael.
You played with some sensational players, legends of the game. Blight Cable, Schimmelbusch, Gregg, Dench, and every time you name a few, you leave a few out. Who was the one that you most enjoyed watching play in the blue and white colours?
I still to this day think Barry Cable's probably the best player, pound for pound, that played the game.
That played the game?
Yeah.
Wow. Caves would agree with that.
Well, Caves would, yeah. Well, he never lacked confidence. Well, I think when you get to that level, you've got to be confident. It's all very well being humble and, being reserved and facading. The people that really aspire to the pinnacle, the one constant or the common denominator that's always prevalent among them is their level of confidence within themselves. You've got to be.
Fair enough. I want to ask you about a particular game against Richmond, not the 74 grand final. It was a game at the MCG.
Well, one of the finals, I played a lot of good finals in those.
That stung you, didn't it, when I said that you were...
Well, I don't know who did that. One bad game. I reckon I played one bad finals.
And that was the 74 grand final?
Yeah, I played a shocker.
Well, there was another...
Barassi was going to sack half the side, in fact.
Yeah, well, in fact, he did, didn't he? Dennis Pagan was a casualty of that game.
Yeah, I think he was the only one, but there was about 7 or 8 on the list had their paper stamps. I think it was Ron Joseph the following morning.
This is after the grand final.
After the grand final, when the dust settled, I think on that night, because you've never seen a more scathing tirade of invective or a bucket of abuse ever poured on players directly after a grand final. When
that
we
was
thought
at the function,
at the Southern Cross.
That function,
well, if you remember it, God, it wasn't very pleasant.
No, it wasn't, and it wasn't taken well, was it? I think there was a sense of achievement that you'd reached the grand final, and Barassi says you can't be satisfied with that.
Not only can't be satisfied, we understood that part. But then to, castigate in the manner in which he did, was quite scathing. And a lot of people didn't take it too well.
1977 comes around. You're 27 years of age, is that right?
Yeah.
77. North Melbourne is to win its second flag. You're still playing in vertical stripes, but they happen to be black and white. What happened? Why did you leave North? Was it your choice or theirs?
Oh, no, they sacked me then. I got sacked, Ron Joseph hauled me in. I think Barassi had enough of me then, and I certainly... a lot of my interest was waning then. And
interest in football?
Interest in footy, I genuinely, I'd nearly burnt out. I'd had massive injuries up until then.
Yeah.
Not that you cite those as an excuse, but, I'd had 10 knee operations. And, whilst I loved the atmosphere of footy, I loved the sport, I loved the footy, I didn't enjoy much playing.
Really?
At that stage, no.
Because of the expectation, or?
Well, no, not the expectation. It was hard. If you play it the way it should be played, very hard to enjoy. If getting buffeted around and
you were playing at 100 kilos, weren't you?
Yeah, but I enjoyed it up until then. But I'm telling you, towards that latter part, that 77, was a year I didn't enjoy.
Okay. Well, you were at Collingwood then, weren't you?
And I went to Collingwood, and after 4 games, I left.
Now, a couple of other decisions weren't so good for you, were they? Well, maybe not. Maybe you think they were right. Posing nude for the truth?
Wasn't my greatest decision.
Was that a decision born of necessity? Did you get paid for that?
I did.
Did you need the money?
I would have. Whether or not, I don't know, but I thought it was fairly appealing as well. I wouldn't have been a fortune, for God's sake.
So you posed in a centrefold in the Truth newspaper with a Sharon in front of your private parts.
Right. Which without being boastful, wasn't.
I knew you'd do this. Yes, go on.
Well,
was the Sharon big enough?
No. I'll leave that to you. I mean to say, it wasn't as risque and it wasn't as bad as it all appeared. But in those days, it probably wasn't what you would expect of one of your prime.
Was there any fallout from that? With your footy club or with your family? Or
Yeah, well, certainly my parents weren't impressed. Far from impressed. And I don't think the footy club was that impressed either. I didn't really hang around long enough to to find out one way or the other.
When I asked you another decision that you took, you were at a country race meeting when you were supposed to be training at Arden Street.
I was.
I know you didn't commission the photo that appeared in the paper, but why did you do that?
That was a very bad choice. And I remember being at the race. We were at the Wagga Cup, in fact.
Yeah.
And I was photographed that Wednesday night at the Wagga RSL at a dinner.
Did you know you were being photographed?
No idea.
Oh.
And I was regaled there, and I thought, this is wonderful. Until I got up in the morning. And there was another guy there with me called Brian Mulvihill.
Played for North Melbourne.
Played for North Melbourne. He was a high-priced recruit from Adelaide at the time. And he and I went to Wagga together. And we'd had a bad Saturday. We had a bad week. We had a bad defeat. And Brian Dixon, of course, stipulated that regardless of circumstance, everyone's got to attend training on the Thursday night. So I said to Brian Wednesday night, I said, you better leave, you'd better drive, you take the car home, because you'll definitely get dropped.
And obviously
he said, he won't drop me, he won't drop me. So anyhow, you can imagine when I woke up Thursday morning, I slid the paper under the motel room. I picked up the paper, I went to the toilet and put it on the front page, and there I was axed.
You're on the front page?
Yeah, it was dropped. So by the time I flew back to Euston Airport in those days, we flew back in a private plane with a friend of mine. And there was the media bureaus waiting for me.
How did you handle that?
Oh, with aplomb.
Silly question.
It was.
After the break, Sam Kekovich, the entertainer. Your older brother Brian played for Carlton.
He did.
Played in the premiership team 1968, kicked 4 of 7 goals, and it was a winning score.
The great trivia question.
Yeah.
The only side to ever win a premiership kicking less than the...
Correct.
The vanquished kicked more than the victor.
Yeah. 4 of 7. He didn't play long, did he?
Well, he had a bad back. He got crippled.
Did he?
If you remember.
Yeah.
To this day, he still has difficulty walking.
Does he? So he had to give it away.
He had to give it away.
The one that you know, I need to ask you about your younger brother,
Yeah.
Michael. Michael was killed on a run when he was still at Trinity Grammar, correct?
He was at Trinity, yeah.
Yeah. On the roads, running on the roads in...
He trained, running home to where we lived at Doncaster in those days. And after a game at Trinity, he decided to run home. And unfortunately, got struck, twilight hours. An unfortunate circumstance, and that was,
Were you at home?
Gut-busting.
Were you at home?
No, I was at Arden Street. In fact, we played St Kilda. I remember vividly, we were in the having an after-match drink when I got called into the room. Ron Joseph.
Ronnie told you, did
Yeah.
Do you remember how you coped? I mean, you wouldn't have coped, but do you remember, did you go to...
Horror scenes, yeah. Horrific. You wouldn't want to go, no one goes through that. You read the tissues, you think, how horrific. I can identify because I've been through it, but those people who go through it, awful times.
What lasting impact did it have on the family?
Well, it still does. You never get over it. You work your way through it, but you never get over it. It has a terrible effect for a long, long time.
He was obviously a very promising...
Very talented, and pardon me, he'd already played a game.
Did he play a night game?
Yeah, and the general consensus was that he was going to be by far probably the best of the three of them.
They always say
that, but he was.
Yeah.
He showed a lot of talent. But he's also a very good academic, accurate at Trinity Grammar, and just a terrific kid.
The future of your footy club, Sam, I know you're very fond of it. You're closer than that. You do a lot of things for North. You care about them and obviously care about their future. Where do you see it?
Look, I still see us as a very much intricate part of the competition.
Based in Melbourne?
Well, that's a decision they've taken upon themselves. I'm not so sure that it is based in Melbourne. But certainly in the foreseeable future it is. But how sustainable that is, I'm not so sure. I'm not that close to it now at the moment, by the way. But You know, they're
You're
doing...
still doing their functions? You're still...
No, we don't have that many functions now.
Okay.
No, I don't. But occasionally I still go. But look, they've worked terribly hard. They've got a wonderful facility. They've got a great playing list. And but at the end of the day, you know, the prerequisite for existence is bottom line. I think where we're sitting at the moment, if we can just monitor our debt and eradicate some of our debt, I think we're going to be in a fine space.
Okay. You're flying now. There's no question about that. You're very successful on the entertainment promotional circuit, if you can call it that. Wasn't always the case, was it?
Oh, no, look, if you know me as well as anyone, most people do. You know, no one's gone through the depths of despair and pinnacles of success more than I have. In fact, you know, I've slid down that slippery banister of life pulling splinters out of my backside more than you've had hot meals. But it's always been a good journey. I mean, people don't mind if you transgress or, you know, you've got plenty of foibles. We're God's children. But it's good to have learnt, and I've been very fortunate that the one thing that's always been my basis for my recovery, for want of a better term, is the likes of the Ron Josephs and the Barassis and the Mantellos and the Aylets. And in recent times, the Richard Collises.
Yep.
You know, he's a great mate of mine, a fantastic mentor, and arguably probably the greatest leader of the free world.
What a free world.
Free world. He's been outstanding.
He has. There's no question
look,
about
and you
that.
got no idea how many people he's inspired. But he's a very humble man, but he's very confident within himself. But
let me take it specifically to the mid-90s.
Yeah.
I mean, you were very much down on your luck at that time, weren't you?
No. In the mid-90s, I was fine. Mid-90s, about early 90s. Early 90s, I was really struggling. I had very few job prospects. I was sort of meandering through life.
You were skint, weren't you?
Yeah, my word, I was skint.
Yeah. Was that because of...
But I went through many... I've been through fortunes two and three times.
Is that because of the punt?
Oh, no, it wasn't directly through the punt. You know, sure, I punted, and sure, I socialised, and I was probably a beacon of excess. And that's, and that was the way life was then. And I enjoyed that social part of it. It's just a pity that, I probably didn't have the income to sustain it.
It went through your hands pretty quickly, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
I wasn't the most prudent, I didn't have the most prudent fiscal policy, Michael, no.
Kekovich, the entertainment phenomenon, to the best of my knowledge, probably started with your appearances on the ABC show called The Fat, is it?
The Fat was the one that probably took me to a national level, yeah. It gave me a wonderful opportunity.
That was fundamentally a Sydney panel, wasn't it?
It was a Sydney panel, yeah.
And how did you get involved in that?
Well, I wasn't the first choice there. I think Johnny Platten was the one that they were seeking originally. But for reasons best known, I think it was the Doc.
Dr. Turf?
Doc Turf, the nominator, said, she'd go and get Sam Kekovich. Well, that was probably one of the big breaks that I got.
Now, you are massive on the entertainment scene, there's no doubt about that. I've done some work with you and I've been in audience when you've been there. If I were just hypothetically in the corporate sector and I rang your management company and said, I want Sam Kekovich to speak to our management team, what would we get and how much would we cost?
Well, I'd cost nothing. I'd be at your beck and call. You've got to understand, we do a lot. There's a lot that we do, as you would, I imagine, do a lot of charity work and a lot of nothing.
But I mean, is it on your website?
No.
It's not?
No.
So it's negotiable?
It's negotiable. Everything's negotiable, Michael. Everything's got a price.
But it would be, like, if I were to say in the order of 10,000, would I be...
I wouldn't turn up for that. Stop belittling me, humbling me here, will you?
Tell me, we've talked socially before about the impact of the lamb commercials on the lamb industry.
Right.
Just give us an indicator about what that campaign has done.
Look, it's been a phenomenal success. It really has, and not only because of the commercial, but you got to understand the resilience of the Australian farmer to produce the quality product that he has in such adversity. But the great thing about the commercial has touched the average punter because they can relate to it. Because I think it's been a fantastic fit in terms of depicting our greatest asset. There's always been this endemic belief in our culture that money is the universal panacea. So someone like you who resembles the top end of the food chain, as opposed to someone like me who regards generosity of spirit, the sense of fair play and self-deprecation as our most important values.
Do you mean that?
I do mean that. I mean to say, taking a deep breath and having a good old belly laugh. We overdose on tolerance and political correctness. We are delusionary. We're all about dependence instead of independence. We're all about welfare. That's un-Australian.
You are a political commentator, aren't you, in your own way?
Well, in my own way, yeah, but not because I've been taught out of a manual. My parents taught me. I saw what they did. They were my inspiration. Not because, you certainly wouldn't be inspired by any contemporary politician, I'd say.
No.
We talk about drugs being, performance-enhancing drugs banned in sport. They should be made compulsory in politics. It's absurd.
Right, enough of the political stuff.
All right, keep going.
Everyone has a regret in their life. People say to me, I've got no regrets. Everyone has something in their life that they would have liked to have done better or differently.
Yep.
Have you got one?
Yeah, I'd like to have eradicated your initial comments that, I was probably a waste of talent. I wouldn't like to have been thought in that light. But I guess
so it does hurt you, does it?
Well, it does.
Yeah. Implicit in that statement is that you believe there's some substance to that observation.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah.
No, I'm not shying away from it. And I'm not using anything as an excuse for my demise, if there is a demise.
No demise.
But purely self-inflicted. And I understand that.
Hey, Sammy, it's been great chatting. I always enjoy
always a delight, Michael.
listening to you, and particularly when you're up the front entertaining. And I loved watching you play. And I think it probably is a bit harsh to suggest that it wasn't a great career. It was probably shorter than it should have been, and it mightn't have had as many highlights, but it took off at such a rate that we expected, you could be watching the best player ever.
Appreciate that, Michael. Thank you.
Nice to see you, mate.
Always a delight.
Thanks,
mate.
This has been a Fox Footy production for Fox Sports.